Welcome to Worldwide Business. I'm Kathy Ireland. Imagine having the ability to analyze human performance, the ability to stop workplace injuries, the ability to stop finger pointing and blame, the ability to save lives. With time spent in the nuclear Navy, Mark Paradise, president of System Improvement, learned the theories behind human error and advanced concepts to correct human factors problems. Plant personnel, engineers, and managers aren't typically trained in human factors. So Mark built these concepts into TapRooT and is here to tell us more. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm glad to be here and glad to be able to talk to your audience.
Well, thank you. Now, Mark, you've blogged on your website, taproot.com, that human error accounts for the majority of industrial accidents. Let's dig deeper into this. Is incompetence, laziness, or lack of training a factor?
You know, it's interesting. A lot of people start out with that assumption. They think that people it's almost like they intend to make errors or they're careless and make errors. But we find that's not really true, that there's really system-based causes for most errors. So human error is a big factor, but there's reasons why people make errors.
Mark, something else very interesting in your blogs. I noticed that your interest in human error was sparked by your stint in the nuclear Navy. Can you talk about that? I mean, any place nuclear is not a place for errors of any sort, I would assume.
No, it isn't. You know, the nuclear Navy or nuclear business in general, people always think, oh boy, that's really hazardous. But there's lots of other places where you don't want to have human errors. You wouldn't want your surgeon to say, oops, in the middle of a surgery.
Right.
So there's, whether you're working at utilities, you're a pilot, you're at a nuclear plant, you're a surgeon, all sorts of different industries have risks that they want to avoid human error. So they really want excellent human performance, better than normal human performance. If you talk about what is good human performance, if somebody makes one error in every 100 times they do something, that's pretty average. That's not really good human performance. But if they make one error in every 10,000 times they do something, that's really good human performance. So what we're trying to do is get people from making a lot of mistakes to making very few mistakes, and then set the system up so not only do they make few mistakes, but there's things to catch them in the process so that if they do make a mistake, it doesn't become an accident.
Mark, you studied advanced human factors technology, but TapRooT is specifically geared to help companies without advanced knowledge. Can you explain that to us?
Sure. When I first started doing this, I thought, well, one way we could do it is just train everybody in human factors. That took me about 2 years to learn the stuff I know now, and it was pretty intensive learning. And most people don't have 2 years to study human factors. So then I thought, well, there should be some way that I can get them to ask questions. And we really started working on what we call the root cause tree, and this little book here called the Root Cause Tree Dictionary. And those were the basis for getting people to ask better questions. So there's a sort of a flow chart of questions you ask, and that's followed up by much more detailed, in-depth questions you can go to here. And it really helps people start looking for problems they really didn't understand or ever look for before.
And you've basically made a very esoteric discipline very simple for your clients. How do you do that without losing quality of process?
That's sort of the secret of TapRooT. I think it's because we applied the same human factors principles that we wanted people to look for to have successful performance into the system we developed. So we took the knowledge of human performance and actually built a system around that. So this system is made to be able to be used by people and get to the root causes of problems.
And Mark, could you elaborate further on the 7-step investigation process?
Sure. Well, actually, we've got 2 different processes. One is for basic or simple incidents, and that's only a 5-step process. It's a little bit shorter. And then the 7th-step is for major accidents. And the one for major accidents, what we found is people a lot of times start jumping into the why before they really understand what. So you start off the process by planning your investigation, and then the second thing you got to do is understand the sequence of events, what happened. And you really have to understand the sequence of events, what happened, before you can understand why it happened. Then we identify things called causal factors. Those are the mistakes that were made or the equipment failures that happened that allowed the accident to happen. And we normally find that in major accidents, there's multiple things that went wrong. Then you take each one of those and you analyze their root causes. So that's when you go to the root cause tree and you start asking these questions about why somebody made a mistake or why some piece of equipment failed. There's generic causes, because when you get to the root cause, there may be some bigger system problem that's happening that allows it to get to be where it is. Then you can start developing corrective actions and get approval for those corrective actions.
So within the platform is the root cause tree. Could you
Right.
explain what it identifies?
Sure. Basically, you start out here at the top of the tree and you're looking for, is it a human performance problem or an equipment problem? And a lot of the times it's a human performance or a human error type problem.
Okay.
And we've got a standard 15 set of questions we ask to get people to dig into where could that problem be coming from.
Right.
And then on the back side of the tree, we've got 7 basic cause categories. You can think of these as collections of best practices that you can use to help people have more reliable human performance. And so what you're really looking for is what best practices we're missing, or what can we do to improve human performance so we don't have this kind of error happen again.
Well, in this worldwide business field report, we take a closer look at the TapRooT system and learn the 7 steps to fixing human error at its root.
We recognized probably about a little over a year ago that we needed to make improvements in the way that we analyze incidents, the way that we find the real root cause of incidents, and actually adopted a new tool to use to identify root cause called TapRooT.
This is kind of like a foolproof formulaic tool from beginning to end, and at the end, you're going to come up with root cause.
We wanted other areas in the organization to be able to benefit from those corrective actions and from what they learned from that investigation. So we developed lessons learned.
It impacts not just the individual that something happens to, but everyone around them, whether it be their home life, their coworkers.
Every morning, I communicate with the team that I'm on, a lessons learned that comes from a direct root cause that was discovered using the TapRooT system. I believe that that's going to make a difference in the long run.
We spend maybe more time with our coworkers than our families or anybody else in our lives. We care about these people. You know, we feel some responsibility for making sure that I'm watching out for you and you're watching out for me. That's the way that we like to operate as employees at National Grid.
Mark, can we go back to your days in the nuclear Navy where you developed TapRooT?
Well, actually, I didn't develop it in the nuclear Navy. The nuclear Navy started me on the road of what is excellent performance.
Okay.
The nuclear Navy was really the first, you could call it operational excellence or high performance organization. Admiral Rickover, this is really an old story, but back in the early 50s, in 3 years, they designed and built the first submarine-based nuclear reactor. 3 years, you think of that today.
Right.
And they had technology hurdles together, and he really decided that in reactor technology, standard human performance, what we have occurring normally in the Navy, wasn't good enough. So he really wanted standards that were much stricter than people normally had for most of their business. That's sort of a kickoff of where it came from. But I really didn't learn the human factor stuff until I went back to the University of Illinois, my last 2 years in the Navy, where I was lucky enough to get a master's in nuclear engineering and learn the human factors, disciplines, science, art, if you will, of how do you keep people from making errors.
Wow. Well, thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
And how exactly do you analyze human performance?
We start by looking at the what happened first.
Right.
And so we lay out something called a snap chart, and it's basically a visual way to look at the what happened. And when you start doing that, I've seen a lot of people who go, gosh, we really didn't understand how this happened until we put it down on paper and laid it out. We can do this in paper or we can do this in software. Nowadays, if you don't have a software process, you really don't have a process anymore. And so that's the key to it, I think, is understanding what and laying that out and really understanding the what happened before you start digging into why it happened.
And what testing was conducted to establish the TapRooT system?
Gosh, it's been a long process. We started out back in the 80s. I had a lot of experts help me by reviewing what we did. So it would be an expert review of people who are in the human factors industry. And then we, of course, did a lot of practice ourselves looking at incidents. We probably did a couple hundred incidents to use as tests for does this work and how can we make it better. Then we started using it. And so we started out using it ourselves, but eventually we had users, hundreds of users, giving us feedback. And then we actually got an advisory board of about 60 people, and every time we were going to make a change, they'd try it and provide feedback as well. So that's been maybe 20 years now of development gone into that. It really has been a lot of development and testing. And in that process, we also were lucky enough to get a contract with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and they actually paid us to go out to talk to industry experts, and we developed a huge network of people that were just really amazing experts in their field. I remember one of them was a guy named Jerry Lederer. Jerry was, he did the pre-flight on Lindbergh's plane before he flew over the Atlantic. I met him, he was 95.
Amazing.
And you just meet people like this and you just think, wow, this is what an individual. And he actually was responsible for 3 of the root causes that are here on the root cause tree. He suggested, you ought to add this to it, you ought to add that to it, you ought to add this to it. So you never know where you're going to learn something and where you're going to get an idea from.
Oh, that's amazing. Mark, can we talk application? Can you give us a scenario, a client facing red alerts and red-faced clients? I mean, they come to you. What do you do?
Okay, I like to say we have 2 kinds of clients. And the one is sort of like you're saying, it's somebody who's in trouble. And they've had a big accident. You know, you've had a giant oil spill, or you've had a factory catch fire, or some other bad thing, and there's been fatalities, you've got regulatory people breathing down your neck, and usually management has been fired. So what you get is the new set of management coming in and saying, we need help. But the clients I really prefer to work with are not those. It's the clients who are good and want to get better. They're really good and they've reached a plateau and they're really pushing to get better performance. And for either of those clients, what we do start with is teach them our system, teach them what we do, and teach them how to apply root cause analysis in a little bit different way than they've thought of before. For the ones who are in big trouble, they've got accidents to apply it to. For the ones who are in good and trying to get better, we really can teach them to use this proactively and use it for audits and assessments and to get out there in front of the accidents and prevent them from occurring.
And Mark, I think it's amazing that you've made TapRooT so popular by simplifying a very complex process. Does the popularity continue to foster growth and design changes?
The better we make it, the less there is to change, is what I've learned. However, people who are using TapRooT, as we get more and more of those, we have a global TapRooT Summit, and the more people you get involved with that, the more learning and sharing of information there is. So I think in that way, we see growth and new things come out, new ways to improve performance that are shared there at the summit. We probably do less and less changing of the basic product. The books I had here were rewriting our basis for TapRooT. This is a sample of the books. We're going to end up having 10 books. That has been 8 years since we rewrote the book the last time. Prior to that, it was 4 years. Prior to that, it was 2 years. Prior to that, it was a year. So as you can see, we're getting less and less the need to rewrite things, I think. And even the changes, sometimes you think, well, those are small. To us, they seem huge, but to most people, they look at it and say, well, that wasn't a big change. But to us, now little changes seem big.
And so does TapRooT also have various training options?
Yes, we do. Our basic courses are a 2-day course for people who are going to investigate small, simple incidents, low to moderate risk incidents, and then a 5-day course for people who are going to do major investigations.
And can the software be customized?
The software is very customizable. We now have cloud-based software, so people can either get individual licenses for it and hook up wherever they got web access, or they can have a company license for it and host it on their own cloud, and everybody in the company can get in and use the software, and they can customize it to be whatever they want for their company.
Mark, what is most meaningful and rewarding to you about this work?
I think saving people's lives. I had a guy 3 summits ago come to me and said, Mark, I really have to come thank you. And I said, what for? He goes, well, we're at a small refinery. We used to have people die. Every couple of years, we'd have a fatality. And since we've started using TapRooT and applying it, nobody's been killed. And when you think we're just a small refinery, imagine all the places around the world using TapRooT. You're probably saving hundreds or thousands of lives a year. And that really is something I really would like to thank you. And I just really hadn't thought of it that way before. The way I like to think of it is, it's not us that's doing that, it's all the people out there applying TapRooT and who are using TapRooT who really need to be thanked for what they're doing, saving people's lives.
Who needs to be using TapRooT?
Obviously, if you've got a high-risk operation and you want good human reliability, that's an obvious case. But we've also got places that are maybe not so obvious. I mentioned a surgeon earlier. Hospitals. Tremendous number of people die each year from mistakes made in hospitals. That's an excellent place to apply TapRooT. Also, you don't have to have a safety incident to apply TapRooT. Nobody knows what the problem is what they're going to cause when they make a mistake. So the interesting part is you may decide, I want to apply this to my quality systems as well as my safety systems, and therefore you can apply this across the company. Also, equipment reliability issues. Downtime costs companies a lot of money, and so having equipment that's very reliable also can be a big plus for people.
Right. It sounds like any business could really benefit from this. Nobody wants to make...
If you've got risk and money at stake, then it probably is a good place to apply it.
And finally, to learn all about human error, we can attend the annual TapRooT Summit.
Yeah, the summit's a great place to learn about TapRooT. I think the best thing to do to get started is to attend one of our 5-day courses if you're going to do major investigations. But the summit keeps you up to date with what the new stuff is, all the new stuff coming out, and any new improvement ideas. We work really hard to get great speakers at the summit that'll really help people understand what is the newest stuff they can learn about improving human performance or equipment reliability.
And where do we go to find out about the summit?
Our website, www.taproot.com.
Right. Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining us and for explaining just how exciting it is to make things more boring in the workplace by reducing human error with TapRooT. We thank you and wish you continued success.
Thank you.
For Worldwide Business, I'm Kathy Ireland. Thank you for watching.